First question is, Emily, how can we improve our English?
Well, there's lots of different answers to that question. But the first thing that I think is the best way to improve your English is to do things that you enjoy. So if you like reading, then read a book in English, or if you like music, then listen to some music. Or if you like cooking, for example, you can do some cooking in English too. And that's my biggest tip.
All right, thank you. And that's a really good idea. So just do what you like to do, but try to include some English in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, when people learn languages, we often say go and speak to people. And I think in Italy or in Spain, for example, that's a lot easier than it is in some other countries. So what advice do you have for students about making conversation?
Yeah, so that's my second tip is, have as many conversations as possible in English. And like Ian said, it is a bit more difficult in the UK, but it can be as simple as, when you get on the bus, ask the bus driver how he is today or she is today, or when you go for a coffee, make small talk with the people who work in the coffee shop. Or you might be out in the park with your children and you might talk to the parents in the park about your children. Um, but if you find it difficult to find people to have conversations with, I know it sounds a bit strange, but you can always practice talking with yourself, reading out sentences or talking to yourself in the mirror. I do that sometimes when I'm learning Spanish, so that can help too. But just talk as much as possible.
Okay, so it's the idea we have that practice makes perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Um, that's actually tip number three, is to practice the skills as that in English as much as possible. And so those skills are reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And sometimes it's easy to avoid the skill that you don't like. So, for example, if you don't like listening, you might not practice it. But actually, you should focus on the skill that you do find difficult, and that way you'll improve faster.
That's really good advice, and that's something that I need to work on with my learning of Russian. I'm not so good at speaking, so I tend to just nod. Um,
Yeah.
but obviously, we can't improve if we don't practice.
Yeah, exactly. Practice makes progress.
Aha! All right, that's a good slogan for a t-shirt.
Yeah, I should have one on now.
Okay, quite often in lessons we get lots of new words or new phrases, and sometimes they can just disappear. So I think your next tip is how to record and remember what you hear and what you see.
Yeah, so my next tip is to keep a diary or a notebook in English. And, some people like to write about their day. Um, and this is really good for your mind and well-being as well, to write about your day and think about, how you felt that day, how was work that day, maybe a high and maybe a low that day. But if writing a diary isn't for you, you can also write a vocabulary diary. So you write down each word you learn and you can have a look at a dictionary. There are lots of online free dictionaries. I recommend Cambridge, but every teacher has a favorite dictionary. And you can write down the meaning of the word. You can write down some sentences using the word. And that way, at the end of the week or at the end of the day, you can look back and you can review everything you've learned. And reviewing is really, really important, like Ian said, to remember those words.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, which is to review and repeat.
Yeah.
Sometimes students will say, "Oh, we did this already." And I will say, really? So you know everything about it? You could write 10,000 words on this topic? No. So, coming back to something, repeating something, adding a little bit extra every time is really useful.
Yeah, exactly. And new words as well, they often, like you say, Ian, it might be one word, but then it might have five other words branching off it. So it's about expanding and always reviewing what you've learned so you remember it for next time.
Yeah, and if you write down these words, you might hear when you're out or when you're watching TV or listening to the radio, you might hear a new meaning for this word or phrase, which you didn't know before as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So I notice sometimes when we have these Zoom lessons that there are some students who are writing things down. And I
Mm.
notice that often these students are the ones who progress more quickly.
Yeah, definitely. The students who write things down and also the students who look at the class materials after class and review those materials are the students who, like you say, progress because they remember everything.
Okay. And so our next tip, which I think is a really valuable one, which is about asking questions. Now, often in class, the teacher asks the questions and the students answer the questions.
Mm.
But of course, in real life, we might want to get information more than we are asked to give information. So, what tips do you have about asking questions?
And I know that asking questions can be difficult because I think a lot of it is confidence, not having the confidence to ask those questions. But like Ian said, it should be the students asking us the questions, and not just in class. Like we were saying before, when you have conversations with people at work, at college, at school, in the park, at the coffee shop. Try and ask as many questions as possible. And that way you're practicing your speaking and you're practicing asking questions. But in class, if you ever think, I don't know that or I don't understand that, then make sure you ask the question. It can be as simple as, I don't understand, can you explain please? And all of the teachers at Action Foundation will be more than happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, and quite often when you don't understand something or you think you don't quite understand it, there'll be another student or several other students who feel the same, but are too shy to say so. And I mean, I've been in a language class like that when I haven't understood and I have just sat there and waited for somebody else to ask. But
Yeah.
if nobody asks, then nobody will find out. And sometimes it's a really small thing that just needs to be cleared up for a number of people.
Yeah, definitely. That actually happened in one of my classes last week. We were looking at the time and how to tell the time. And one brave student asked a question about the time, and then another five students said, "Oh yeah, I don't understand that either." So having that confidence not only answers those questions for yourself, but it also answers those questions for your classmates too. And I also think if any teachers are watching this, make sure you always ask the students, do you have any questions? Because then maybe that will help you guys to ask some questions.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things you can do as a teacher is just ask, do you understand or is everything
Yeah,
clear? Because the students will always say yes,
yeah.
even when the answer is no or not quite or I'm not sure or you lost me.
Yeah, exactly. So always asking those open questions, just do you have any questions? And it always usually leads to at least one question.
As a teacher, I quite like it when students ask questions because it means that I can help them with something that's actually important to them at that moment, not just an idea that I have or that the school has. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, definitely. So if I'm teaching a class and somebody asks me a question, it might not be related to the topic, but that's great because that means you're again, like we were saying before, we're expanding, and you're usually helping other students out too. So even if it's not related to the topic, it can be about anything. Just ask the question anyway, and that also helps us become better teachers because we have to answer those questions on the spot.
So I have a tip from one of our students, Emily, which is about asking questions. And this student said that, to practice speaking, but to practice answering and asking questions, they would ring up, for example, the library or the swimming pool, or maybe, Virgin Media, and just ask lots of questions with no real idea about going to this place or doing this thing, but just to see if somebody can understand what you're asking and if you understand the answer.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. If you're calling up places like that, then they're going to answer your questions, and it's that real life practice. English in everyday life is so important. So yeah, just be brave, call Virgin, call a restaurant. And especially, as things get back to normal in the UK, because things are opening again, then that gives us even more opportunities to go out into shops, into restaurants, into coffee shops, and just ask questions.
Yeah, and to find those opportunities. So, for example, if you need to take a train, think about calling up to book your ticket or going to the station and booking your ticket with the person, not just doing it online.
Yeah. So, we have those machines, don't we, in supermarkets, at bus stations, but go to the person or go to the checkout and make small talk, ask some questions, and I promise you, your English will improve, definitely. The more you use it, the better you'll get.
So finally, I guess an important question to ask is, what's a really bad way of improving your English that students might think is a good idea?
So I think, and I've actually done this before, so I know from personal experience, a bad way, so a way not to improve your English is to only think about learning within the classroom. So at the moment you're on Zoom, so you're in your Zoom classroom, you're doing well in the class, but then the Zoom finishes and that's it. You don't speak English outside of class, you don't review your class materials, you don't really do any extra practice, and you don't really have those conversations in English, and you don't ask questions. And if that's the case, you're not going to remember and you're not going to progress. So it's about taking everything and putting it together. So using English in class and outside of class. So just always review and always try and have as much speaking time as possible, I would say.
Yeah, I would say, really value making mistakes. If you make a mistake, you can correct it. If you just want to use English that you know already, and that's fine, but you're not going to improve. I think quite often this happens with children. They don't like to make mistakes, so they don't say anything. And if you don't say anything, then you won't make any mistakes, but you also won't improve. So if you think that your lesson is a bit easier, if you can answer all the questions correctly, actually you need to try a more difficult class where you will make mistakes and you will learn in this way.